Today I want to talk about the importance of identifying your light source and shading. To create a realistic image, whether it be a portrait or a sphere, whatever it is you're trying to draw, it's important to know that your light source and shadows are matched up. The area that is facing the light is called the core light. It's not the brightest area of your surface, but it's facing the light source. The brightest part of your surface is going to be your highlight. The highlight's going to either be very bright if it's on a shiny surface, or if it's on a dull surface, it's going to absorb some of the light. So it'll be more of a dull look to it. But overall, it's going to be the brightest part of your object. Now on your object, you're going to have what's called the core shadow. The core shadow is the darkest part of shading on the surface of your object. So it's not going to be closest to the bottom of the object. It's going to be at the end of the value scale from your light to your midtone and then dark. The reason why it's not at the very bottom of your object is because of reflected light. Now your midtones happen after the highlight and before it gets to the core shadow. The midtones basically is your value scale. They'll appear brighter whenever it's closer to the highlight, and it starts getting darker as they approach the shadow side. Now reflected light can act in various ways. Let's say you have a cue ball on a green pool table. The light reflecting from the table itself is going to reflect a green glow on the bottom of the cue ball. So if you have something on a white surface, it's going to give you a brighter highlight of a reflected light than if you would have it on a dark surface, which the dark surface would absorb a lot of the light. So it's something to pay attention to whenever you are doing your shading, to see where your reflected light is. And a lot of people don't realize this, but when you're doing portraits, the underneath side of the nose is a good area where you will find reflected light, because it's reflecting off of either the table the person is sitting next to or around, and reflects back up onto the bottom of your nose, because that's the part of your face that sticks out the most. Now you also have your cast shadow and your occlusion shadow. The cast shadow is the shadow that everyone thinks of when you think of a shadow, when you're doing, shadow animals with your hands on the wall. That's a cast shadow. If your light source is very direct and bright, it'll give you a sharp edge of your cast shadow. Now, if you have a cloudy day, your shadow is going to have a softer edge to it because it's more of a diffuse light. The occlusion shadow is the shadow that is immediately below your object. So it's where your object touches the surface of whatever it's on. It's going to be the darkest part of your shading, but it may not be the darkest part of your image. Say like you have someone with black hair. That's going to probably be the darkest part of your image. But as far as your shading and your shadows are concerned, the occlusion shadow is going to be the darkest area that you'll be working with. At this point, I want to show you a fast forward version of a sketch drawing that I did on my iPad. Whenever you're shading, like I've said before, start light and then you build up on your values. So basically just place your shadows where you feel like they need to go and then build up from there. Don't use a heavy hand, just lightly keep adding to your image until it's right. And don't be afraid to erase. That's what they're made for. It's important to practice shading on various surface types to get a natural feel and muscle memory for shading. I apologize in advance. You'll start noticing things in advertising, especially if it's created like in Photoshop, where the person may not completely understand how light sources work and just try and make something that looks good. And the light sources are coming from like all different directions for one image. And it's good if you notice these things because you're paying attention and it means that you've learned something. Just don't call anyone out on it because it can be a little rude. Just make mental notes and make sure not to make the same mistakes in your own artwork. Keep practicing until you get it right.